Okay, so thank you everyone for joining me. This is how to succeed at your internship. All right, so first, to do. So before you even start your internship, it's important to do these things. So first, you want to Google yourself. So you could even do this before you start the interview process, but it's important to do kind of like a social media sweep. Um, And a way to start that is to Google yourself, see what comes up. If there's things that you don't want to be readily visible when someone searches you, delete those pictures or posts and make sure that your privacy settings on all your social media accounts reflect how much you want available online. Next is research company norms and values. So before you start your internship, it's also a good idea to research your company that you're going to be with or organization. Try to gain information on the company norms and values. Sometimes that's listed on their website or that's discussed in your interview. This can give you a sense of how things are usually done in the office and prepare you kind of for what to expect. Next is prepare to arrive on time. So you want to make a really good first impression and continue to be on time throughout your internship to show that you're reliable and responsible. I know some things happen that are out of your control, like traffic or public transportation is running late, etc. But your internship is expecting you to be there at a specific time. So if something does happen that's out of your control, and you're going to be late, at the very least, communicate that with your supervisor or immediate manager so that they can stay in the loop. It's just a respectful and professional thing to do. And my rule of thumb usually, though, is to just always be at least 10 to 15 minutes early. This kind of gives you that cushion time just in case there is like traffic or public transportation is running a little late. Next is dress for success. So this is something that you can ask during your interview or after you get an offer, and just being aware of the dress code. Dressing accordingly to the dress code is just a good way to participate in the company's culture and represent the company or organization's brand, and of course, make you feel more comfortable when you actually are in the office. And then lastly, pack your bag. So if you're actually going to be in a different state or city for your internship, you may actually have to pack like luggage. But even if your internship is in the same area and local to where you're living, it's good to be prepared. So pack your bag the night before with pens or a notepad, maybe like a water bottle and some snacks, whatever you need for the day, just so it's one less thing to worry about. Next is get organized. So I know when you start something new, it takes some time to feel comfortable, but really try to push yourself to make the most of your internship. Um, excuse me. Right from the get-go, really try to get organized. So schedule lunch with your manager and weekly check-in meetings with your manager. That's always a great thing to do. If they don't initiate that, you can suggest that. Grab coffee with your coworkers. There's a lot of things that you can learn from coworkers about their experience at the company or organization you're at, or about their career path, or just to get to know them better is always really a benefit for all parties involved. Um, Familiarize yourself with your environment. I know sometimes in larger offices, it's a little intimidating to go exploring and trying to figure out where everything is. If you're not sure, feel free to ask just until you get acclimated. That's totally normal. Um, and always be punctual, which essentially means just always trying to follow the timeline and deadlines set for you. Be on time, follow the rules, that kind of thing. Um, and remember, your first impression is very important. So remember, it's also important to keep in mind that not only are these just your coworkers and supervisors and managers, they're also people that can be included in your professional network. They can write you letters of recommendation, serve as references, etc. So it's really important to make a really good first impression and try to build that relationship with them. And then tip number one, so take advantage of the transition time at the beginning of your internship. Ask a lot of questions. So try to soak up as much information as you can. in the beginning of your internship is a great time to get all those questions out there because you're new and trying to get acclimated. It's totally normal. And even throughout your internship, it's okay to ask questions, but really try to take advantage of that first transition period in the first week or so of your internship. Next is get connected. So as I mentioned, your first impression is really important. Internships are, of course, like a way to develop your professional skills and gain professional experience, but it's also a time to network. So that's that first bullet point there. Conduct informational interviews, which can be, you know, with coworkers, your manager, whomever you kind of have interest in the positions that they hold or learning more about the company. That's a great place to start, is setting up some informational interviews. And find a mentor. So a mentor doesn't necessarily have to be your manager. It can be a coworker or someone on your team that you don't necessarily report directly to. It's kind of a nice neutral person to learn from and build a relationship with. And really try to put yourself out there and accept all invitations as your schedule permits, of course. So to lunches, to coffee dates, sitting in on meetings is always a really great learning opportunity to see how other teams function, how your own team may function at a high level, things like that. It's really great to get involved with. And then lastly, solicit advice and feedback. So wherever you can, like I said, you want to soak up as much information as you can. And so asking for advice or asking for feedback is a great way to kind of kickstart your professional growth. And just a word of advice, try to keep in mind that feedback isn't necessarily like a personal attack if it's something that's maybe not as positive as you were hoping for. And just keep in mind that, you know, your manager, supervisor, whoever is providing that feedback wants to support you and ensure that you're getting the most out of your time at your internship as well. So really try to take advantage of those opportunities, even if it feels a little bit uncomfortable. Tip number 2. Tackle all tasks with enthusiasm and in positive attitude. So I'm a personal believer of how positive attitude is infectious, and it's something that's definitely noticeable. So I feel like as an intern, it's really important to try to embrace that attitude and make the most, again, of your experience. Next is, actually, before I move on, I'm going to do an attention check. So if you guys can just quickly answer this question, I just launched it, that would be perfect. Just take a few seconds for this one. All right, 10 more seconds. If you haven't already taken the attention check poll, please do now. All right, thank you, everybody. All right, continuing on. So get involved. So while you're at your internship, it's good to pay attention and participate in meetings. So this can mean, you know, taking really good notes, offering your opinion when you're asked, and not, you know, being on your phone or distracted in any other way. Really try to be present at these meetings. You can propose a project to your manager or the team that you're a part of to show your leadership and initiative, as well as like your curiosity. Proposing projects is always a really great professional development piece of an internship. So if that opportunity arises, definitely take advantage of that. Avoid office gossip. So try not to engage with this kind of conversation. This is, you know, throughout your professional life, it's something that you should try to shy away from whenever possible. And then stay positive and professional. at all times, and try to manage up. So that basically means like trying to understand kind of your boss's position and requirements, and to be an asset to your boss or supervisor, and really kind of taking that extra step to exceed expectations, to show initiative, and doing, anything needed to support, your direct manager, supervisor, boss, um, in their needs or the team's needs, and really just, again, taking initiative, which leads me to um, tip 3. So be responsive and reliable. So be tuned in to the needs of your team and your supervisor, and try to really anticipate what's coming down the line and respond accordingly. And, be reliable. So try your best to meet deadlines, do what you say you're going to do, and yeah, be reliable. Next is keeping track, or keep track. So here are some things you definitely should keep track of during your internship. So manage your time. So keep track of your time. Try to manage your time well. Internships, are a great way to try to kind of figure out how the best way to manage your time is. If you're not sure kind of like what to prioritize, you can always ask your team or your manager. You can also ask about different tools your coworkers may be using to help them manage their time and stay organized, if you're wanting to try something different. Best practice is to reply to various communications within 24 hours. So if you get an email but can't answer it right away, try to give a reply within 24 hours, even if it's like a reply to inform the sender that you're working on whatever they're asking for, but you saw their email and you're on it. Just to kind of like acknowledge them and the email that they send, so they know that you're not just like ignoring them. um, Track your progress. So sometimes companies or organizations will provide tools to do this. If not, just try to keep like really good notes when you meet with your manager or team members, especially like with the progression of your project. And if people provide feedback, keep track of that as well. That's really useful information to kind of showcase your progress from beginning of your internship to the end of your internship. Next is document everything. So similar to tracking your project progress, documents can essentially kind of build a case for yourself when you ask for a final review at the end of an internship or letter of recommendation. It can also be important point of reference if you need to refer to something down the road, or when it's time for you to leave, you want to make sure that whoever is taking your position next or taking over a project of yours, that they have everything that they need. And then lastly, build your resume. So as you complete tasks and projects, etc., try to like record those things so you can add them to your resume eventually. It's pretty easy to like forget about all the wonderful things that you've done during your internship. So writing it down, even if it's just like jotting it down in a Google Doc so that you don't forget to eventually add it to your resume later, that's totally fine. But I think definitely like recording it somewhere is important, so that you make sure that you include all the great things that you've done. So next is prepare for your exit. So before you leave, there are some things that you can do. You can ask for a letter of recommendation to be used for like a professional or academic opportunity down the road. Ask for an evaluation or an exit interview to provide like room for feedback, both for you to receive and also for you to give to, if there's space for that. Regarding your experience with that particular company or organization. Prepare for your replacement. So I kind of touched on this, but you want to make sure that if there are any projects that are unfinished, you wrap it up or get it at least to a good stopping point. Inform the correct individuals about anything that's unfinished. Share, like all the necessary or important documents with the correct person. So like I mentioned, to ensure that the next person who fills your position or the next person who's taking on a project you started has all the information they need and doesn't have to kind of reinvent the wheel. And lastly, keep in touch. So try to continue cultivating the connections you built with your manager, supervisor, or coworkers. They can all be a great addition to your professional network. And it's really important to try to continue on those relationships so that, like I mentioned, they can serve as, references or write up you a letter of recommendation down the line, years after you completed your internship. Part of networking is really just building relationships. So you want to take advantage of those relationships you started to cultivate. Tip number 4, so be direct about wanting a job and make friends with human resources. So it's important to share your genuine interest to hopefully plant the seed, at least about being hired in the future. And human resources is also a great resource for you to get a sense of how things go when they hire, how that process looks like, and for them to keep you in mind if HR is a part of that hiring process. And yeah, so that they have you in mind for the future if there is an opening down the road. So some final tips. So firstly, we're going to go over some tasks. So before your internship ends, you want to do some things before you leave. So present any projects that you have to your manager or your team. Receive final feedback from whomever you worked with is usually a good place to start, not just your manager. Distribute handwritten thank you cards is a really nice touch, or at least some form of thank you, something I feel like that they'll remember you by. Of course, providing gratitude or showing gratitude is really important. So make sure that you do that. And again, update your resume. Next, you want to reflect. So reflecting is a really important part of growth in anything that you do. So reflecting after your internship is a good thing to do to ensure that you completely made the most of your experience. So you can ask yourself questions like, what did you learn about yourself through this experience? What did you like best about your internship? Least about your internship? What skills can you use in the future? What did you learn from your challenges in this experience? All these things usually will come up in interviews later down the road, or things that you can mention in a cover letter. So again, you really want to try to reflect so that you can close out your internship experience and make sure that you really are getting the most out of it. So in summary, you want to prepare, network, produce, reflect, and give thanks. So that is the end of this presentation, but I will be taking any questions at this time. So if you have questions, feel free to chat them to me. Any questions? All right, I'm going to launch the post poll, so please take that before you leave. 1 second. So one question that a student asked is, how often do people get a job after their internship? I'm not 100% positive on the numbers, but I know that a lot of the larger companies um, tend to do that, and it's definitely not uncommon. Um, so it's something to keep in mind when you're doing internships. It's a great thing to explore, but also if you really do end up liking it, really trying to advocate for yourself and, seeking out opportunities to potentially apply for a permanent position. Um, so another student asked, what would someone do if the internship happens to respond late or is behind on anything? So usually the rule of thumb for me is I'll wait like a week or two for a response if a date wasn't provided. And you can always reach out to the contact there just to kind of check in. There's nothing wrong with that. It's always good to be on top of it. Um, if it's longer than 2 weeks, you can definitely reach out to them and ask for a timeline or ask about the status of your application. I feel like that's totally normal and actually kind of a good practice. It shows that you're advocating for yourself and you're serious about the opportunity that that particular internship is offering. Um, so another student asked, if I start my internship on Monday, but my supervisor has not specified what time I should be in or what my schedule looks like, should I wait until she gives the schedule? Personally, I would definitely reach out to your supervisor. That's my opinion. Um, just to get a sense, at least what time you should be there by. You can probably work out the nitty gritty of your schedule after you meet with them, but at least to start out, you can say or ask like what the expectations are for your time commitment. Like, is there a preferred time that you come in and end? That's all I feel like general information that you should have available to you. So I think asking is totally fine. Um, Another question a student asks is, how can you get in contact with human resources? So um, it depends on the company and the organization. Larger companies I know will have a larger human resources department, but usually they'll have kind of like a general contact that you can reach out to once you are in the internship. You can also ask your manager about it and just kind of frame it like, I'm curious about how human resources works, or I'd really like to um, understand the hiring process more here because I'm really enjoying my experience. Do you mind connecting me with someone at Human Resources? But typically that information is readily available to staff. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. There's also a question here that says, what are other ways students can continue to foster and maintain relationships after their internship? Which is a great question. So something that I highly suggest is adding people on LinkedIn. Even when you first start and kind of start that relationship, adding people on LinkedIn is really a great starting point. And you can always like comment on their things, message them later, and keeping in contact doesn't just have to be virtual. I know for college students, finding free time to schedule like a coffee date isn't always easy during the school year, but if you are home for like breaks or returning to the specific city that your internship was at, scheduling like coffee or a lunch date or anything to really continue that relationship is always a good idea. Even if it's just emailing them kind of like an update on your life, it doesn't have to necessarily be about hanging out, but yeah, I hope those are some things that you guys can do. Um, I think that's most of the questions in here. Oh, there's one question, one final question I'm going to answer from a student. and the student applied for an internship for the summer, got interviewed but didn't get it, and wanted to reapply, and was wondering what they could do differently during the interview. I think that it's great that you're invested in that particular company or organization and you want to reapply. That's really admirable. And as far as like what you could do differently, I think interviewing, no matter what interview you do, it's always practice. And it's a really good experience whether you get it or not. So hopefully you can kind of take a step back and think about the questions that were asked that maybe stumped you or you had a hard time with, and really focus on those. And of course, if you have like really specific questions about preparation, you can always email the career development team at Students Rising Above, or ask your advisor. Your advisors are great resources to utilize for that kind of improvement that you're looking for. And I'd say practice out loud as much as you can. Practice as many of the questions that you can find like online, and just get in the habit of kind of thinking on your toes and kind of getting used to hearing your own voice. And yeah, just practice out loud as much as you can. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you all taking the time. I hope that you guys all have a nice evening, and I will hopefully see you next time. Thank you.